Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This is Langley Outdoors Academy, and thank you for stopping by. Alright guys, today we're going to talk about what I think we stumbled across a secret gun control bill that's going through the Senate, or at least the back halls. Now, before I get too far going, I got to put the credit where credit is due. This was actually sent to me by a viewer, okay? Victor Charlie, you know who we are. Thanks for the tip. I looked into it. You were onto something. Great job. If you guys have a tip or something that you think I should see in the gun world or related to the gun world at all across these majestically beautiful 50 states, the email you can send something to is live, that's L-I-V-E, at langleyfirearmsacademy.com. That's a good tip line, but enough of that, guys. Let's get into the actual content. So the content that we're talking about today is specifically the rumors and kind of the backdoor understandings of a gun bill. Now, I've been hearing a lot over the past, probably 3 to 4 months about there's some secret bill going through and Cornyn's gonna betray us. He's the senator from Texas, and Blumenthal and Murphy from Connecticut are after it, and there's all these secret deals going on, and there wasn't really anything to point to that other than conjecture. But I've got everything linked in the description box below, as always, for you guys, because there's something to it. And as always, something we always talk about on this channel, always look for the why behind what's going on, especially in timing. And timing is what we're going to hit on today. I'm going to lay out what they've kind of released at the same time, coincidentally, but then I'm also going to point to what they're actually referring to give you a complete package and understanding of what we're talking about. So, without much more ado, let's get into this. All right, so the first article is actually titled, "A Quiet Bipartisan Effort on Gun Background Checks May Have a Path to a Deal." Well, immediately you think H.R. 8 and H.R. 1446, which have both stalled. Nothing's happening because there was open resistance and the filibuster stood in place. But there's something else referring to a different plan, so let's get into it. Senators Chris Murphy, Democrat from Connecticut, and John Cornyn, Republican from Texas, have been quietly negotiating a way to bolster background check rules by making a small but consequential tweak to current law, which they say would close an unintended loophole in the system that has led to preventable mass shootings. Okay, that's the really, really important part. When I'm looking for gun legislation, one of the main things I look for is existing or current law, because that means they're not making new things. They're enforcing existing law. That's a key point here, but we're going to keep going. Specifically, they want to clarify who is required to register as a federal firearms license, or FFL, and thus conduct FBI background checks on a buyer before selling a gun. The senators say an ambiguity in the law has enabled unlicensed sellers to transfer weapons to dangerous people who skirt around the background check system. Now, if you guys are kind of setting some alarm bells off, that's private sellers. Okay, now there's a very important distinction, but we're going to touch on it in 1 second, so bear with me. Oh, and as always, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So, what Cornyn said, what we're trying to protect or carve out are the hobbyist and or casual transactions between friends and family members, but capture the people who literally are making a living and making a profit selling firearms, and give that to the U.S. attorneys to prosecute. That's existing law. Okay, there's nothing new there. They're talking about focusing on basically people who would sell guns and claim it was a private sale, but they're selling like hundreds a year. Right, that's what they're talking about here. Now, this is the important part. This will put you at ease. Still, the two parties disagree on other gun-related issues. While there's room for a deal on licensing rules, a Cornyn aide said they were not even close to an overall legislative deal that can pass the Senate. Okay, so the big thing here is it looks like they are talking about existing law and enforcing existing law or clarifying existing law, which immediately I'll watch. I'm not going to send up a red flag like the world is ending, but I'm going to watch because I don't trust politicians. I know you guys don't either. But that's interesting. So now let's actually address what they're referring to if you're not familiar, because this is an important video to send out so we can spread knowledge, okay? They are referring to the private seller ability to sell a gun and transfer property from A to B, okay? If I were to sell you as an individual watching this video a firearm, that's perfectly legal because it's my property selling to another person, as long as I don't know you are a felon, okay? However, if I were to hypothetically buy 200 firearms in a year and I sold all of them to different states or different people who couldn't get those guns through a firearms purchase program or an FFL or a background check, that would be a problem. I would no longer be a private seller. I would be a business for profit skirting the background check system. That's what they're talking about. That's the example, okay? Now, you kind of brings up the question, why is this being addressed now? Well, number one is because HR 8 and 1446 are dead in the water. We talked about that months ago when it was first announced. It wasn't going to be past the Senate. By the way, woot woot. That's an amazing thing. But now let's look at what they're really talking about, because NBC coincidentally did an article 2 days apart. So all of a sudden we saw nothing about this, then we had an NBC article and a USA Today article both saying the exact same thing. It's not interesting, is the timing coincidental? It's not, because that's how this works. Two different companies send out the same content 2 days apart at the same time. The senators are announced and kind of let it leak out. Yeah. All right. So now the US Today article, I'm starting you off with an actual image of the 4473 or the firearm sale paperwork. You can see here they sold 3 multi-calibers in the example they're talking about, lower receivers. This is the serialized part that is the actual gun, considered the gun with the serial number on an AR-15. The person in question here ran an individual gun shop out of their home, and that's what they're kind of referencing. Now, it's really, really important not to confuse these two. I'm going to lay this out really quickly the best I can, and then we're going to go forward, okay? So, the ATF calls the people that they're talking about FFLs that go like sell guns out of their home. They call them kitchen table dealers, and based on some estimates, they hold a majority of the gun shop licenses. Now, this is really important. This is the exact same as a pawn shop or a gun shop. It's just in someone's home. The place is different, but the legislation, the requirements, everything's the same. Okay? Really important to note. Now, the media is going to say this is a problem. It's not. It's perfectly legal and it's been around forever. Now, home-based sellers run afoul of ATF rules when they don't record their sales or inventory properly and fail to perform background checks on buyers and sell off premises in the wrong places, okay? This is going towards, and this article is going towards FFLs at home. They are legally able to do what they're doing, but they make procedural, accounting, and paperwork errors, which get them in trouble. That's the translation, okay? Now, there was a place called Mulehead Dan's, and that's where these lowers were received, and the gun actually ended up at the scene of a very tragic event, okay? As a side business for a decade, the guy ran Mulehead Dan's, selling and transferring firearms. Now this is where it gets shady. Among his best customers was Marcus Brazil, who bought more than 94 firearms from him over 3 years. Federal prosecutors in court documents claim the guy who owned it knew Brazil routinely resold the firearms without subjecting his customers to the background checks. And that's where this is important, because that is against the law. This guy who was running an FFL shop out of his home knew that the person who was making an inordinate amount of gun purchases, because 94 in 3 years is extremely high. Not for some people, but for the everyday American, that's extremely high. And that he knew they were turning around and selling it again. That's what's called a straw purchase. The guy was buying 94 guns in 3 years under his own name and his own background check and turning around and selling that to someone else. That is highly illegal. In fact, the guy got caught and went to jail. But that's the important piece that I want to bring up. They're starting to say that private sellers and home FFLs are bad. Home FFLs are the same as a gun shop. It's what happens when people sell and break the law outside of the federal firearms license system and they skirt the background checks. That's what we're talking about here, and that is why Cornyn is hitting on this point. He's hitting on the point that people are skirting the background check that already exists in current law, but they're basically finding that way that they get around it, and they always get caught. The point here is simple. The system is in place. They either follow the rules or they don't, and if they don't, they get caught. So the existing system works. This is a people problem, not the firearms or the industry problem. And that's what I want to bring to you. We're going to touch on this a lot more. But basically, what you're looking at here, guys, is they're talking about private sellers. They're talking about people who are already breaking existing law. And it's incredibly important that we know the distinction and the difference from someone who is legally selling a firearm in their home as a place of business versus someone who's doing straw purchases and running guns to other places that they shouldn't be. And that is a huge distinction. But that's what I got for you guys. Let me know what you think in the comments field below. Let me know what you think of this idea, this video, because I know it was a lot and I threw it at you real quick. But until tomorrow, I'm Braden. See you later.